Hey guys, it's Sarah, your host here at What's on Your Plate podcast. I don't know if you all can believe it or not, but I can't. It has been an entire year. It has been an entire year since What's on Your Plate became a thing. Happy birthday, What's on Your Plate podcast. I'm so excited. Like everything else, I guess time flies when you're having fun. And I just have so much thanks to give for all of you that continue to show up in this space and make it possible to keep it sustainable. It's because of you all and your desire to be here that keeps it going. I'm so excited to just keep showing up in this space with you. And thank you. Thank you so much for all of your support. To commemorate, I thought it only appropriate to circle back and check in with my first interview, that of which was my friend Paul Stofko. There are a lot of layers to him, as you may have heard in our first episode. Definitely scroll back to that one if you haven't checked it out yet. Paul leaves more insight here with us during today's talk, as well as letting us know what he's been up to the last year and how things get more into focus the older he gets. Here we go. I am here with my friend Paul Stofko again. If you guys can believe it, it has been almost a year since What's on Your Plate has been out in the world for all to hear. And if you are a regular or loyalist listener, you may know that Paul was our very first interview episode. So I want to commemorate that with inviting him back on and just sharing this space with him again, because he's just beyond inspirational, beyond inspiring. And, we could all learn a lot from Mr. Paul Stofko. Welcome, Paul.
Well, thanks. That's a great introduction.
Well, let's just talk about the elephant in the room right away, too, because for those of you that are listening, I do have to tell you that Paul has just come off an epic 24-hour road running race. And he so graciously took a nap before he agreed to come on here with me today. I want to hear about that. Tell me how that went for you.
Sure. So this race was at Chain of Lakes State Park. If you're not familiar with that one, that's in downstate Indiana, right off of US 30. It's actually a trail race. So so how this format works, which is different than most, for 24 hours, we do, well, I'll go in more in depth, but we do a 3.55 loop of miles, and we do as many times as we can. Then at the 23:30 mark, because what we do is because you don't know if you'll be able to complete that lap for that last 30 minutes, they have you run out and back 100-meter wind sprints just to add to your total. So basically how this race works is the people that win is the pretty much the highest total of mileage, men and women, just depending on how many times you can go. So there are some people that did go over the 100 mark. I did not. I got 99.1. So if I would have known like that, I would have done another lap. But that particular race, we did have some rain on a Saturday, and a lot of the trail is clay based. So when water gets on clay, it just doesn't get absorbed. So it's just like a sloppy mess. So it just got slow. And I think for me, this particular race, and mostly all ultra races, there's a point in the beginning of the race where I don't really know why I do this anymore. And then I get to the point where there's you have ebb and flows with ultra running life, or whatever you want to call it. You feel really good, and the laps kind of just go away, and then you're just drudging it. And then I like the night. For me, I like running at night. It's just something about it. The course looks different. You're kind of alone. There's parts in this particular race where there was nobody there for miles on end. So you're all in kind of your head. So there's a lot of things you contemplate, and sometimes you don't think about anything. So I always tell people this is like, if you really want to get to know yourself, do an ultra, because you're going to have a lot of time on your hands to think about it, think about your life or whatever. So, and then I end up getting, I got third overall in the male category. So with my 99.1 miles. So yeah. And then, I got done. My daughter had a soccer game, so I didn't get any sleep. I drove back up and then watched a soccer game, and then I took a nap. So yeah, back to life.
Wow.
I always tell people, I remember I have ran longer distances. I've done a 200 is my longest distance. And my classic story from that is I won overall. So I won the whole race. I get home from that race. My parents are watching my kids and they're saying, we're out of here. And I said, what do you mean? I can't even walk. They're like, okay, you did your race. You're on your own. So then I remember my kids asked me, can you make me something to eat like for lunch? And I can barely get off the couch to walk around. So I think it's nice to have children that kind of humble you, because sometimes you get these like super highs, like I just won this race. And then your kids go, hey, you're a dad right now, so you got to be a dad. I need to go to practice. I need to, I need something to eat. Mom's at work. What are we doing? Kind of thing. So the kids, it's nice to have. I think it's a good humbling experience, because sometimes you get a little bit like, oh man, the ego is right there, but then it's like, the kids come down and tell you, hey, you know what, you got to be in that. That is the aspect that the balance, I think that gets to especially with life. You have these highs and lows and families and those kind of different things, but it's my kids understand a little bit what I do. They've been through it before. They've helped with races and stuff like that. But it was like that was the first experience that my kids were young enough to understand I did something tough, but didn't really care.
That's a great way to say it, because I mean, I can understand how you would have like that bit of ego or bit of sense of entitlement for a second there.
Correct.
Like, look, I'm not getting up and doing nothing, but
Yeah.
like I actually have to do the dad thing. So
Correct.
it doesn't matter what
Correct.
I don't want to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's
So
awesome. And then you speak so dismissively about, I did 99 miles. It wasn't quite 100. You're so like just dismissive. Again, I'll use that word about that, but that is just an amazing accomplishment to most anybody else in this world. So again, congratulations on that awesome accomplishment. And third place is amazing. And this too, right off of like a 50 miler that you really struggled with a few weeks ago. Is that right?
Correct. So I was at the Potawatomi race that was in Pekin, Illinois. So about 2.5 hours away. So what happened with that particular race is I only trained in the conditions like maybe 40 degrees tops. And then I think the Friday, we had the race on Friday and it got up to like 85. So, heat stroke and all that kind of stuff. And I remember I got finished and I was feeling horrible. And my friend was there and it says, here, take some ginger ale and drink some water. And I said, okay. And then I just threw up all over the place. And I'm like, just not again. Heat has never been in my whole career, has not been my friend, I guess. I like colder races. So like pretty much if the spring, well, depending if the spring is, the way it's been going, spring doesn't, one day it's 80, the next day it's 40. But winter races I enjoy too. Just I don't have to worry about getting overheated and those kind of different things. So yeah, that was a quick turnaround. And I can tell you, when I ran this race, I felt like I wasn't fully there, coming 2 weeks off and having some heat issues. I felt like, I'm like, I'm not I think with ultras too, you're going to have your good and bad days and you just kind of wing it. I felt fairly good most of the time, but I was just like slow for me, I usually can, I've done a 24-hour race before. And I kind of knew what to expect, but I think for that particular run, the previous 24, I didn't have anything before that. So I was just training for one specific race. I didn't, kind of have 50 miles before.
Yeah.
I
I
did
think
that.
for non-runners that look at something like that, there's just a real lack of understanding about just all the different factors that go into what can affect the outcome of such things. And if you just don't know unless you know.
Yeah. And I think once you get into the longer distances, like even marathons and that kind of stuff, the weather kind of dictates a lot of that stuff. So I always tell people ultras are very unique. And I always tell people, if you're looking for, deep thoughts and contemplating your life, you should do an ultra. I mean, whatever distance, anything above, we consider it like a 50K is considered an ultra. I don't see, I think for me, in terms of deep thought, is you do the longer races where you're running through the night and you're trying to get through that. And then you might have, we might have some friends that crew or pace as well, but that's like a whole nother ball. I think ultras are just a different, just totally different than just like a short distance race. But there are times we were laughing because we had this gap between the time that we finished our like big loops, and then we had like 15 minutes before we had these out and backs. So I had some friends and we were just saying, you know what, we could be doing a 5K and I could have finished that and gone home and not even think twice about it. But yet we're sitting here and I've been running for the last 23 hours. And I said, yeah, I guess that's true. Some days 5Ks are, you miss those days, like, and I still do them, but I guess you don't get the thrill, for me. I kind of grew and did my long distance stuff, and I'll throw some shorter distance races in there, but that's not my bread and butter anymore. This is what my specialty is the long distance stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're certainly talented at it. That just is proven over and over again. But I know that, like we've talked about before, there is so much more to you than running, right? If people, especially in the area of Northwest Indiana, and more specifically in the running community, like see that just as like the superficial part of you, but there's so much more to know about you. Especially if you are lucky enough to kick out miles with you and learn more about what is under the surface, you definitely get to know the man behind the running life. And I would love for you to share more about just reflections on the last year, especially, but in particular, just how you are seeing things maybe differently since we spoke last like this, what you may have included in your obituary writing that we talked about before. And, listeners, if you are hearing that and don't know what we're talking about, go back and listen to Paul and my initial recording, and you'll understand what we're talking about, and that Paul takes time to reflect on himself by writing his own obituary periodically. So go ahead. Like, I just want to hear more about like what's been going on.
Well, I can tell you so for the obituary, I think I took a creative writing class is basically where I got the idea. And they said probably every 5 years of your life, you should write it. So this kind of my birthday, January 21st, people put Facebook page like like some kind of happy thing. I wrote my whole obituary and posted it. So so that people were like, my mom wasn't too happy about that. But what I said, because I think when I would look at doing the obituary is just to evaluate. So like if you do it every 5 years, your obituary in your 20s, 25 and 30 and whatever, their things are going to be different. Your life changes, you get married, you have kids, or you don't, or those. So you're looking to reflect yourself, and I think obituary is kind of the best way of doing it. and for me personally, is I want mine written. I want to write. So I told my wife, I said, this is what I want it to be. Because, some people put in what they want to put in if they write an obituary, but I wanted to look at my life as it has changed over the years. And in this particular obituary for my birthday, I kind of looked at more like um, my, being a father and being, a husband. And sometimes you have difficulties with your kids, and, you have some arguments with your wife. And I think a lot of people tend to put the best foot forward in a lot of their posts, but I'm pretty like, hey, I'll tell you, it ain't, butterflies and rainbows, as they say. So I think as I've gotten older and and looking at my life, I try to, and the whole thing about writing these obituaries is to improve things. So you're at this point in your life, this is what's going on. And hopefully by writing it and putting it to words, then the next whatever time you do it every 5 years, you look at it again and say, okay, I had made slight changes that I felt like I was, not doing at that particular time. So I guess for me, it's not morbid to me at all. It's more like you can kind of, if you put it on paper and you can kind of see, and I can tell you the final draft was, probably the, 10th or 13th revision, because there's some things where I felt like, well, I didn't talk much about that. And you wanted to highlight all the things that you include in your life that are special, like, volunteer work or charities or those kind of things. But then also running is a part of that for sure. But, you always have to, include family and those kind of things. So I think for me, the balance has been tough because I do a lot of stuff. So I sometimes I feel like uh, I don't know why I do a bunch of stuff. I think, probably 15 years ago, I wasn't doing as much stuff as I was. But then I started joining, different organizations for, say, like for the Indian Dunes. Then I, became the vice president of the town of Chesterton water treatment board. So there's things that kind of evolved, and then I keep on looking at like, wow, I'm doing all this stuff, and then I'm thinking, man, I don't know I can handle that, because there are some days, and being a race director as well, I mean that the weekends are sometimes busy and hectic, and then the kids and that kind of stuff. So I look at that being, why am I doing all this stuff? But then I feel like there's some days where I feel like it's making a positive impact in the world, and if that is what I have to do and do multiple things, and that's great. But I know sometimes, and this happens, that sometimes where you just feel overwhelmed, like I got so much stuff on my plate besides everything, that does take a lot of time out of like family life or running or traveling or whatever that may be. So I think for me, I feel like I have to, I guess it's almost like leaving a legacy. Even though running is what I do and it's involved, but there's other aspects that I enjoy or support. So I think that doing that obituary kind of put everything into focus would be what I use it for. And then, I'll probably look again, but the big, I'm 47 now, 50 would probably be a big time to look at my life again, and in terms of writing the obituary and then you can always see how things change. I think in your younger years, there are things that you deem that are so important. And then now as 47, I could care less about that stuff. But that's when you're 20. So you should evolve. I think that's the issue with everybody. If you stay stagnant and you keep on doing the same things, I don't know, your life is not going to be that great. Just got to keep on, doing new and exciting things, and keeping being involved. And if that inspires people to do and challenge themselves, then that's great.
Yeah, I really agree with so much of what you said there. And, being of service and doing something that is serving a greater purpose than your own is really what would resonate for me with all of the different things. Because I can see what you mean about wanting to, or questioning whether you should set something down because you just feel like you have so much going on. And I am in that same position much of the time where I feel like I'm doing so many different things. And sometimes it does just feel like you're almost suffocating in it a little bit. And are you really giving any of it all the attention it needs? Or is it okay to distribute yourself amongst it all? I can definitely relate to that for sure. And I've questioned myself with that as well. But if people are benefiting from all those parts of you, and if you see the good you're putting out with all those different ways of reaching out, then I think it's okay, even if you feel overwhelmed some of the time.
True. I think that's, and for me, I think there are moments in my life, like we do beach cleanup. So we have beach clean coming up in a couple weeks in May. And, that is something that I've done through pretty much more of my race series than anything. But then we've got to partner with other organizations that kind of do that. And that's something like tangible, like we can pick up garbage and we go to the Indiana Dunes State Park, and that park has become, it has always been popular, but I think the last couple of years we've definitely have gotten more people coming there. And I think that's more during the COVID times. Some of the areas in Illinois closed their areas, and then Indiana Dunes State Park stayed open. So not to say people are coming in, but I think people sometimes don't respect the area that they're visiting in. And if you remember, you always want to leave a place better than you came. So, but I can tell you, doing beach cleanups for the last 3 years, you see the weirdest things, from canopy tents to all kinds of weird stuff that there's on there. But
no reason for that to be on a beach.
Yes, correct. So I mean, that's something, the nice thing about doing that thing, it's when you do like volunteer, it's instantaneous. You picked up garbage and then you got it off the beach.
Yeah.
So it's satisfying, I guess.
Right.
Is what I'm trying to say. Some of this other stuff is like, not really tangible stuff, but when you do something like that, and then you have, with me being in Chesterton, I'm only like 10 minutes away from the dunes, so that's kind of like my bread and butter in terms of where I run, where I do a lot of volunteer work, and with organizations as well. So for me, that's it's Chesterton's, my home. So you want to make it as best as you can.
I think too, sometimes when we are pursuing different things that don't feel as tangible, I think there's a lot of truth in that. You just need to keep going and trust the process too, because sometimes the things that you're doing that maybe you question, like, what is this even for? And why am I spending any time on this? It evolves into something else, or brings forth a different opportunity or way of serving that maybe wouldn't have been there otherwise.
Correct. I can tell you, just doing other activities, you get to meet people that, kind of have the same passions, as you, for whatever that you may have. So that's always, bringing people together. From race directing to volunteering, that kind of stuff is, I think as a race director, for me, doing trail races for people that have never done that trail race before, I always tell myself, I'm out there at 4 a.m. with a headlamp putting these flags out the day before the race, or that morning. And I'm thinking, you know what? I could be sleeping right now, but then when I have the race and somebody comes up to me and says, that was great. My daughter has come and she's 12 years old and she wanted to really do a trail race with me. And most of my trail races are very elaborate, where we go through water or something elaborate. So they always have a good time. So that 4 hours of I'm sorry, going out at 4 a.m. to mark the course kind of melts away, because you see the people coming and they're enjoying an experience that you put together. So sometimes when I think about, I want to race directing, I got another race this weekend or whatever. I think that's, and I listened when Tim Feely was on here. I think the experience or bringing people together, that's what makes race directing. It's all the time and effort that you put into those particular races, it all is worth it if you get people that maybe have never even tried running or never done a trail race or never done a road race, and they come in and say, thanking us for doing these things. So that helps it a lot, because there are times you feel like, does anybody care what I do?
Yeah.
And I think that you need that reassurance. Like, there are people that are grateful you're here, or grateful what you're doing, and whatever that you may do. So it's always nice to be appreciated. So.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. That's like food for your soul. I mean, and when you're putting love and attention out into the things that you're passionate about, and in hopes that it touches somebody else, and then you get that same energy back, like that's really what it's that give and take of what we need to give and what we need to give in order to feel fulfilled. And I think, it sounds like in a lot of ways that affirmation that you get back is the reason, in part, that even when it's hard or you're questioning yourself, you're able to continue.
Yeah, that's true. Because I think that those moments where you're just like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, and then you have a race that, I don't know, something happened that was just magical, like somebody that never ran and did your 5K trail run, and they come and they finish and they have a good time, and then you're like, what, this is all worth it, this. And I think that I mean, that's in any job, but
yeah,
I think for race directing, because you put so much effort into, I know for my races, like my heart, soul probably bled on the course from getting cut from putting flags up or whatever. So I think for me that my races represent my personality, where it's like, it may be challenging, but we're going to have fun. And we get goofy and do crazy things, like run through water, creeks, crossings, or whatever it may be. But that's what I think you need to enjoy. I mean, a trail race without any kind of like adverse conditions is not that fun. But
well, then it's a nature walk.
Yeah, correct. So you want something that's challenging, and I think we like to bring people together that that they want to try something in it. And I always try to relate to them that the environment that you're coming into is non-judgmental. So just come on in, and if it's going to take you, they'll always come up to me and it's going to take me this long to do it. I said, well, I'm going to be at the finish line, and I will wait for you, and we won't do anything until you come in. So, go ahead and, within reason. I'm sorry. I'm going to be there 5 hours. So I'm like, okay, with them. But within that, I think that aspect, because we usually get all kinds of emails. Well, I've just started running, and I don't think that I can do this. And I said, you know what? Why don't you just come and try it? And it's good to challenge yourself and do like a trail race, because a lot of people come from road racing, and it's a totally different thing. So when they come to my trail races, I tell them, just have fun. I think I always try to instill, we're not cutthroat here. I'm not gonna being a competitive road racer, you sometimes get a little more aggressive. There's a lot of people that get aggressive, like, trying to get their pace, cutting you off or whatever. But I always tell people, the trail race, hey, just have fun. You might get lost. Sometimes that happens, and no big deal. And if you just have fun, I think that's right. I try to instill as most of the races, like, just come and experience it. We're it's not going to be, you're not going to win $1 million, and there's not going to be like gold bars given away to top finishers. It's just, I'm just glad you're here,
Yeah. And I think a lot of that really circles back to what you said earlier about the things you cared about in your younger years versus about now. Being able to take things in stride in a different way at this point in life than you maybe wouldn't have when you were younger. I think that's true for most of us. It's like that. What does it really matter if I'm not hitting a pace, or what does it really matter if, I didn't complete the course in the time I wanted, or whatever it is. Because, obviously running is so much more to most of us than any of those things. There's a whole different purpose for it. What about just reflections of yourself, of your life, of just your work and your family over the last year? Tell me some of the ways that things have looked different, or maybe some highs and lows and things that maybe have happened that made you rethink your mindset on something.
Well, I can tell you, we discussed this a little, but my kids getting older, that has been a big change. My son will enter high school next year, and I guess that's kind of the big change in your life, to have a high schooler. And I think as you get older, I think things move faster, for me, that I feel like those times when your kids were so dependent on you when they were young, and now they are not. I mean, they're dependent on to a point, like, to get them places.
Yeah.
But you do miss it. As I've gotten older, I watch my kids, be independent and doing things on their own. And I think that and that could be anybody that gets older. They see their kids grow up. That makes you think. And I think for this year, just because Noah's finishing up 8th grade and he's going into high school in August, that was just I remember sitting for we do like an orientation for incoming freshmen at Chesterton High School, and I've been out of high school for a long time, and they the way they explain all this, like how they need to graduate and all this kind of stuff, and I was like, man, I don't remember any, that back when I did that, we didn't. So they have common, like a core, and then they can do like credits for tech already when they're in high school, and if they are really good at it, they can pretty much even get close to associate's degree when they graduate high school. And this was like unheard of. I mean, like stuff that I just remember trying to get out of high school. I mean, I don't really remember doing any extra work or doing any of that kind of stuff. So I think that as you get older, you see that, and that I don't know, it sometimes gets you a little scared.
Yeah.
Because now you're talking college, or do they want to go to college, or what do they want to do? Like I told my son, you really need to explore different things. I kind of felt when I was in high school that you didn't really have, I don't know, paths to different things. You just kind of maybe looked at like my brother went to school for business. So in my head, I'm just like, well, let's just go to business school. And then as I got, more towards college, I took a few years in a community college just to kind of like sort out stuff and take some basic classes. And then I got to nutrition and fitness and all that kind of stuff. So I think I try to tell my kids, like, just do different things and see what, you know, maybe you don't want to go to college, maybe you want to be in the trades, or maybe you want to do something else. I think I felt like when I was in high school, it was very rigid. We just felt like college was the answer to everything. and then
Yeah.
and then I would I would would see my friends like years down the road, and I said, well, what happened? They're like, I went to school to be a teacher, and I don't like kids. And I
Gosh.
said, well, maybe it might be a thing, but that was like your default. You would always go to college. But I think now we see this with a lot of young kids, that they do explore, and that they're open to different things. I felt we were just kind of rigid, that college was the answer to everything. You're going to have a good job and have a family and a white picket fence and a dog. You just got to go to college. But
And it's like,
now,
who signed us up for that? Like, who said that you wanted any of those things?
correct. And I think that was, and it's nice to see that the youth now that are exploring different things, and not being regimented to do just a college experience, which if that college is that, if that's your choice, that's great, but there's so much other things out there that you can do. So
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. And I'll say, for myself, and I've shared in a podcast recently, I did not go the traditional path at all with my own education. And it's not to say that there weren't challenges along the way, but there's a lot of things you can do, without going the traditional route of a college education. And I just love it now that parents like yourself are really helping their kids explore that more, instead of having that just path laid out, just sort of expected to walk, and not ever really even be asked if that's what's in their hearts, or if they feel good about it even.
Yeah, that's true. And I think, like I always tell my children, to if you have a passion for something, then pursue it. There's and I think youth tend to think that they have to make their lives made up, or everything is in line by 20, 21, or 22. And I can tell you that, that's not going to happen. So I mean, you need to, you're going to make mistakes, or you're going to find something that you enjoy. And I think that we're in a rush to get started with our careers, but sometimes there is the path of taking your time and really exploring what you really want to do, to see that maybe a passion is going to take you to what you want to accomplish. I think especially with when I grew up, it was like money was the determining factor for everything, not what you enjoyed or what you had passion for. It was like, all right, well, you're gonna go to college because you need the money, and you need to buy house, and then you got to take care of your family and all that kind of stuff. And I think that now times have changed, where you're like, what, that is like the old tradition of following that kind of path, but you need to explore. And I think that's the greatest thing people can do is just follow, because there's a lot of other jobs that are not college based, that are passion based projects, from artists to whatever it may be. And I think that you need to definitely let your kids be what they need to kind of follow. I never told my kids, my kids are not even runners, so
Much
that's
to your
why,
dismay, I'm sure.
you know what, sometimes that's fine. I
Right, let them choose
know,
their path.
correct. My son plays baseball, my daughter does soccer, so I'm fine with that. I feel like I never pushed them into that, or had any concept of them like starting them when they were young. They do running within their sport, but but they're exposed. And I think with my kids, I try to expose them. They help me with my races. They do volunteer work. Um, they meet my residents. I work with my seniors, and I think that I try to tell them that these experiences and these things that you do with me makes you kind of a well-rounded person. And you get to see what's behind the scenes, or I think with our seniors, those people love when the kids come around and they question them and all that kind of stuff. So it's always an interesting thing with my kids to come and experience like what I do. Not to say that I want them to be race director or something, or do what I do, but they I think they get to see the behind, all the different things that I do, and maybe that's something that may be interested them in the future, whatever it may be.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And just exposing them to a lot of different types of environments and circumstances is one of the probably, the best things that you could do to just help them find their own way and find their own paths. You mentioned earlier that in the last couple of years, and especially the last year or so, you've been looking at some things from more of a philosophical standpoint in terms of your thoughts and outlook on things. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. I think as I've gotten older, um,
That's going to be the theme of our podcast, as
pretty
I've
much
gotten older.
as I've gotten older. You know, philosophy has always been an interest for me, but I really didn't start getting in there probably the last 1 or 2 years, just reading different things and reading different philosophies. I guess for me, I was curious how people from ancient times to modern times look upon their lives, and their little quotes, or what their how their lifestyle was, that they were philosophers. So I think for me, as I've gotten, the age creeps up, I more contemplate life more than I did when I was younger. So it's always nice to kind of read what people thought, thousands years ago, or something like that, where there's a lot of stuff that's out there, and you see that. I mean, quotes and everything, that they're pretty common in social media, that kind of stuff. So when I saw that, I was like, you know what, you would see some interesting quote. So for me, I'd be like, oh, who is this person? And then I'd find out more about them, and then I would read about them, read a book about them. And I think for me, that there's some things in my life where I feel like, how do these handle these situations? How did they handle stress of the family? How did they do that? So, and it's always good to kind of to read philosophy and kind of understand it, and kind of bring it into your life. So, and I think that's only been in the last couple of years. I never was a really big, I'm not a big book reader per se, but if there's something that I have passion for, it's always easy to read something that I want to, that interests me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of a great broad way to take a closer look at like how it started and how it's going in all the different realms of life. Is there anything in particular that has really stood out to you in any of those things that you've recently learned about or read about?
Not really anything particular, I would say, just in general. I always tell people, when you're looking at philosophy, you're looking at how people dealt with probably similar issues to what we have now, and might be a little bit different, but I can't say like one or individual, or I think it's like a broad concept of different philosophies, and it's interesting. I think for me, I kind of crave knowledge that's unique to me, that I've never experienced, or cultures or those kind of different things that's always piqued my interest. So if there's something that's like philosophy just in general, I mean, I took a philosophy class in college, but it was always like, all I remember in philosophy class was like, there was no right answers. And I'm like, well, how would you get graded? They're like, well, it's all opinion. I'm like, okay. I was like, what's this all about? So I think, as I've gotten older and things happen in your life, and I think what has occurred, I would probably say in the last few years, that we've had people that I know that suddenly passed away that were the same age as me. So it's like, start to contemplate life a little bit more. So they kind of got me more into philosophy. And then, it kind of shocks you because, you couldn't imagine, these people that you knew, years ago, and then you hear something about them, like, wait a minute, that was the same age as me, went to high school together, passed away. And then it just kind of like makes you contemplate your life a little bit more. And I think that for me, it's like, oh, okay, and then maybe there's something deep meaning into your life. And I think that's how I'm very interested in that. And that was never something that ever interested me years ago.
That's interesting to me. And I've experienced that myself this year. When you are dealing with grief or you've lost somebody, the way that opens your eyes to take a closer look at your own life and your own human and earthly experience, nothing else really prompts you to do that in quite the same way. I mean, it's just a reminder of taking a look at what you're doing and the legacy that you do want to leave, or the influence that you hope to have or how you hope to serve. It really is I've said it in other ways before, but there is always good that comes out of the bad. And I think it's true for grief or loss too, that if nothing helps when you're ready to reflect on how you can improve, how you can be better, what you might do differently, how you might be more impactful or whatever it is. So yeah, that I agree with you on, as you get older and you see people passing around you, and you're not a stranger to that, but particularly, just because of the community that you work with, the older, the aging community, but in particular when it's somebody your age or it is somebody unexpected, you just look at it from a different lens than maybe you did before.
Yeah, correct. I think that kind of pushes you to be like, maybe I need to look at my life and what are some things that maybe I want to change, or like you said, what is your legacy? What is your, what are you doing to make the world better? Yes,
Yeah,
that sounds kind of like Pomptons, but I mean, I think now what I think about is like, if what I'm stuff is doing, whatever it may be with all the things that I have that I'm involved in, if that makes the world better in even the smallest aspect, I mean, that is something important to me, which was definitely not in my youth. I could care less about what happened, and then you want to impact as many people as you can, and I look at it as some people want to do these grandiose things like change the world, but that's great. But I think you have to start in your own community, and do something that's, hyper local. I think, and you can get, big and try to change the world. But I think if you do things within your local community that are impacting, local individuals, that is going to make a huge impact, because, this is my community and I'm trying to make it better. And not to say that, you can't go global, but you start off small and then maybe you get bigger. But I think that's more important to me, is like, okay, how can I make this, area that we live in, Northwest Indiana, just in general, better, so when my time is gone, at least I can say, I did the best I can. Not, you're not going to change the world per se, but maybe you change, it's like, I guess, a snowball effect, because if you're helping other individuals achieve whatever it may be, and then they're helping somebody else, who knows what it could occur. So that's always that's a good feeling. I think that's, makes everything kind of worthwhile, with different projects and stuff I do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that ripple effect is, I think, really underestimated a lot of the time. It's like the single act of kindness that you might, do every day. It's like, it doesn't seem like a big deal to, hold open the door for somebody and give them a smile. But depending on what happened earlier in that person's day, you might have just changed the whole tone of the rest of their afternoon, and they might find a reason to pass that kindness on to somebody else. And it's the same thing with what you're doing for your community or how you're being of service. You might not be able to see how doing those smaller scale things is affecting the world, but those people at those events, or the people that you've influenced, are going to go out into the world, and it's just going to be this cause and effect type of situation that you helped create. So it's like, even though you feel like you can't change the whole world, you might be able to change the world for one person, and that's huge. That's important.
True, definitely.
Let's close with a question. I want to respect your time as always, and I can't even believe it's been like an hour already.
I know, we're flying.
I know. You're just so easy to talk to, and I love having these conversations. Tell me if you could pinpoint like a high and a low over the last year. What was your high and what was your low?
Oh gosh, let's see. I don't even remember. I think my memory has gone bad. Gosh, I'm trying to remember. Let's see. This is the high and lows. Oh, I could tell you. I think for me, it's a little bit more than almost 2 years, but I've gone back to the place. I worked at a senior community, but the same senior community I work at now, I worked at before. Mm-hmm. So I was gone for like 3 years, and then I came back to this community that I'm at now. So I think, and that would have been a little over a year now. So for me, that I was able to kind of reconnect with some of the residents that I was there the first time around. And I was able to, and we do stuff like, I'm in charge of kind of every, all the fitness and all like social stuff that we do. So that has become very rewarding to come and visit do that for people. And I always tell people that my seniors to me are like my family. So my grandparents are no longer with us. So I always feel like when I go to work every day that I have a second chance to basically listen to them and talk to them and inquire about their knowledge and things that they have done. So for me to go back to that community where I was at before, I think that's been kind of definitely the highlight, this little over a year, but that I've been back. So that has been just incredible. And I've been working with seniors for the last 14 years, and I think that there's no place where I'd rather be. And that brings me, great joy. And just listening to, I like to chit chat. So for me, it's like the stuff, the knowledge that they acquire over, their 80s or 90s or whatever, it pretty much has changed my outlook on life. I can remember my residents are always telling me, take your vacations and go do stuff with your family, because you never know, what can happen in the future, and never really get bogged down in how, work is important, in certain aspects, but they kind of, kind of instill in me like, hey, you need to kind of do stuff with your family and those kind of things, because those are the things that your, family going to remember. I'm not going to remember like my job, be like, oh, what, when you get down the road, like, well, I wouldn't really miss my job. No, you want the memories with your family and doing that kind of stuff. So I think the residents have always kind of, told me like, this is the things that you should be considered important in life. So I think that this group in particular is definitely, and they're fairly honest. I always tell people they're sometimes too honest, and they tell you all kinds of stuff that you don't want to. But that's just kind of seniors in general. Gosh, I'm trying to think of a low that I've had in the last year.
Well, I guess it's cool if you don't have one, but what I will say about this
Yeah.
last thing that you said is that you actually have a really unique glimpse sort of into the future by working with seniors that a lot of us don't have. It's like you have an in with the in crowd or something about like just that particular like coaching or something and like the what not to do, and because you're such a, gracious person, you just absorb all that like knowledge and recommendation. And I think that is them serving you.
Yeah. And I try to, especially with my seniors, we talk about my family. We talk about, they're a part of my, so I can tell you, like on Friday, I had to leave a little early to get down to the race that I was doing. And they're like, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm going to run 24 hours and like around a loop. And they're like, okay. And then they, so they don't like, I get it. They don't get it, but they sort of get it. But I mean, I get, I think they look upon me like, this is crazy, and I'm like, okay, but they respect what I do, but they maybe don't understand it. But that's fine. And then the thing. But I could. Gosh, there's so many things that I take from them to from everything in life. So I mean, I'm glad that I kind of and I've been in fitness like 25 years. So when I first started, I was a trainer and worked with did that, and then work with younger people, and that was fine. But then when I got to seniors, I was like, well, I don't know about this anymore. I remember my first year, I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. But then you kind of find they are very respectful of your talents and knowledge. And when you ask them to do something, they will do it. So that has always been this age group, definitely the seniors. They're inquisitive. They're asking, what can I do about this and stuff. And there's some stuff I'm like, wait a minute, you're going beyond my skill level. I said, go see a doctor if you're like and do that. But that's you get to the point where you feel so comfortable that these people are they are your family for whenever you're there. So and I'll have people we have 2 chairs that are next to my desk, and people just come and sit down there and talk for like 45 minutes, and I'm just like, okay, well, what to talk about? Are you talking or I bring up like, we're going on vacation to somewhere, and they're like, okay, these are the places that I did when my kids were young. And I think that's just I enjoy that's kind of like my highlight of my day, when we can just have conversations where just little things about life. I had a man talk about his wife that was in hospice care, and how horrible that they had to watch his wife pass away from cancer. And it's like, geez, that was like the first thing in the morning. I was like, boy, this is hard. So I'm like, but we talk about that kind of stuff, and that's things that I will look as I get older. I'm like, oh my, these people tell me what they went through, and those kind of things. Gosh, I can tell you that all those years, I think, changed my life, and then you tend to respect them and their knowledge that I did not do when I was younger. So, you look back on there and I'm like, oh, I wish I talked to my grandma and found out more about her and got her knowledge. But then I feel like this is my second chance. So, so
that's amazing. Just your clearly heartfelt passion for the service and the work that you do. And I can see why it's a continuous high. Like it, the more you do it, probably the better it feels. And, we're just so lucky that there's people like you doing this important work and connecting with that part of the community that is often overlooked. So thank you. Thank you for embracing that, for sure. And, as far as not having a low, really, I mean, I think it's great that you live in an abundant mindset where, you just look at what other people might see as a low and learn from it and take it for what it is instead of focusing on any type of down feeling about it.
Yeah, I think pretty much I've always been a fairly positive person. I can't say that I get, there's going to be lulls and things that get me mad or agitated or angry or sad, but in general I'm fairly positive. I can't think and then the people that I've met did say that, so you try to instill with that. I mean, there's always going to be, life is, it's not all great things that happen, and the things just got to ebb and flow. And I think that I always tell people we use a lot of running analogies for life, because we have a lot of, like, you have your greatest race, and that's your high, and then you have a horrible training run, or it's raining outside or it's snowing outside, and you just got to get it, take it for what it is and get through it, and then kind of go on to the next thing. So that's kind of how I contemplate life. I try not to get down or just like beat myself up, or because everything that I do, there's some things like when you're doing race directing, you're like, oh, it's got to do all these other things, and is this race going to be successful? Pay the vendors and all this kind of stuff. So you just like, all right, take it one step at a time, and don't get bogged down in some of the things that kind of push you down, and that's probably your best bet, to kind of think of life. Never get like super high, like, oh, things are great, and then you never get super low. You're kind of like in the middle kind of thing. I think that's the better way of looking at it than trying to get into like a deep bad feelings, or those kind, because they're just going to kind of snowball into something that could be, you can't get out of the hole that you're in. So if you try to look at the positive as best you can, and I mean, it sounds great, and I know there are the times where that maybe that doesn't work, but for me particularly, I try to look at the best of it, and maybe there's things that are still that are bad in the life, but you're only here for a short period of time, so you try to do the best you can, and ebb and flow. Just go with the flow of anything that you end up doing.
Thank you for just being like an amazing example of deeply feeling all the feels, but also knowing that you can't stay in them. Mm-hmm. That's so important. Paul, what do you want to leave our listeners with today? What thought do you want people to go away thinking about?
I would say, and we kind of highlighted a lot of this, just you can always evaluate your life. I think that if you feel like you need a change, or you want to contemplate something new, it's always good to look. Maybe you want to do a new job, or maybe you want to pursue things, passion that you have. I think a lot of people fear the unknown, and I do as well. But if you try something and if it doesn't work, why not at least say you tried it? And this goes right back to the residents that I talk to. There are people that tell me, like, if I was your age, this is what I would do differently, because I felt like, now I'm 90 and I can't do that, or I wish I would have did this. So I think that, if there's something that you're interested in or passionate about, or whatever that may be, pursue it. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't, you try. So I think that's the big thing I try to tell people, because your life is pretty short. There's not a lot of opportunities, and then as you get older, you're not going to be able to do those kind of different things if you don't take advantage of it when you're young.
That's so perfectly said. Thank you for that. And thank you for this conversation and for coming back. And I just continue to be in awe of everything that you do.
Well, thank you.
I hope you have a fantastic rest of your evening, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
All right, Sarah. Thanks.
Per usual, my conversations with Paul always leave me looking forward to the next one. Whether it's helping someone embrace running, spending time being of service in the community, or being the person someone wants to share their stories with, Paul is always showing us that small efforts can make the biggest impacts. Stay connected with Paul and learn more about his events at crazylegsraceseries.com. Links are in the show notes. I simply cannot thank you all enough for showing up here like you do. If there's something you'd like to hear more about, a conversation you'd like to listen into perhaps, or even if you would like to be part of the conversation, let me know. All ways to stay connected with me and support the pod are also in the show notes. The most important thing, of course, is to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And share it. The love that you put out for this space is just so amazing, and I'm so full of gratitude. I can't wait to keep showing up. Thanks for the love, y'all. I'll see you soon.